Now we're getting ready to actually create the environment so that your child can play more independently. And yes, the environment will make a difference and is going to encourage your child to play independently. So there might be some changes you're going to have to do at home and things that you have to add in or remove in order to increase this independent play. Independent play happens with little ones and big ones. And the core concepts we're going to talk about today are concepts you're going to continue to have as your child evolves. But the toys that are going to be in each of the environments is what's going to evolve to bring them more challenges so that they create more play. So creating a playful space at home is crucially to fostering independent play. The environment plays as a significant role in shaping a child's behavior and development. When designing a playful space, consider incorporating elements that spark creativity, promote sensory exploration, and encourage open-ended play. And that's what we're going to be talking right now. So when you design your playful space, we need to start by decluttering. Most kids are overwhelmed with the quantity of toys that they have. So what they do is they grab all the toys, they dump them on the floor, and they walk away because then they continue to be more overwhelmed. So they don't know what to do. They get analysis paralysis. The more toys that you have out there, the more toys that they're going to be overwhelmed by. So in this case, less is more. But in order to choose what those toys are that we're going to show, doesn't mean we're getting rid of them. We're just going to be rotating them out. We need to kind of declutter. We need to get the junk out. We need to get those broken toys out. We need to try to figure out if toys are missing pieces, if you have puzzles that are missing pieces. When you give a child a puzzle and they are not able to complete it fully, what happens is they create a frustration that they couldn't complete the task. And they'll blame it on them. They couldn't complete the task. But instead is that the puzzle piece was lost and it was never there for them to complete in the first place. So take a look around at your toys. Get rid of all toys that don't have all the complete parts in it. Toys that maybe they have overgrown. If you still have baby toys and your child is 4, 5, 6 years old, they might not be using those toys anymore. And instead, they're just creating visual clutter. So what we're going to do, we're going to take those toys out of sight. You can donate them. You can save them for another baby. But if they're broken and if they're missing pieces, don't even donate that because you're just transferring the frustration to somebody else. So let's just get rid of those. Let's have a fresh start and let's use the toys that they can actually engage. Remember when I said that they get very overwhelmed? There were so many toys. One of the tricks that we do in the play space environment is the art of toy rotation. And you might know and heard about this if you follow some play websites or influencers. And the reason this is that if you have less of a choice, you're going to be able to make decisions quicker and you're going to be more creative with the toys that you have. So they say between 5 to 10 toys is all your child needs. But for example, in my case, I have a full playroom that I can spread my toys around. So instead, what I do is I divide my play area in different spaces. And if you don't have a designated playroom or play area, maybe you have a designated shelf, maybe you have designated boxes of the toys that they're going to be in rotation. So these are the toys that are going to be available for play and everything else is in the garage, is put away in a closet, and is out of sight. This is going to allow you to rotate the toys and create this newness without having to purchase toys over and over again. If it's out of sight, it's out of mind. And when you bring it back, wow, it feels like a totally new toy. There is no specific guidelines like every Sunday you have to rotate the toys or every month you have to rotate every single toy. The way that I do it, and is the way that I recommend because it is most doable for most parents, is just the power of observation. I want you to take some time to look at your child and see what toys they are currently playing in and which ones are not. And usually a quick way to do this is that if you organize your shelves or your toys And you see that some toys are still very intact, very placed in the exact same way that you put them. That means they never touched that toy. It is not part of something they are interested at the time, or is going to give them valuable skills at this moment to work on. So it's an easy, they haven't been using that toy because it's still put in the shelf very nicely the way that I did it. When a child puts a toy back, it's gonna look different than when you put it back. So those toys are an easy remove them. And you just replace them with something else. So let's talk about a little bit about what those toys are. So when you designate your play area, and this could be different spaces around your house, you want to have space where they can access books and they can sit down and read independently on their own or with you. This could be in their bedroom. This could be in a designated corner in a play area. This could be in your living room with a basket. So always have that reading access available. Choose books that you want them to discover, as well as some of their favorite books, so that you introduce something new that they might not be fully interested on their own, but they have the comfort of their own books as well. So I like to mix storybooks, books that foster some independent reading, like books that have buttons and noise. When it's the animals and they have the buttons that it has the noises or it flaps, things like that, that even if your child doesn't fully read at this time, they can still interact with the book, and that counts as reading. As well as some maybe educational books with some real graphics like ocean animals or animals from the zoo or different things that you find interest to you that you want to present that to your child. We also want to have a creative station. And I think this is the most scary station for most parents because they're not used to giving that freedom to the child. And maybe they haven't created that trust or those rules. If your child is small at this time, this station can be a guided station where you have art materials or building materials or drawing materials available to them while they're with you. As you start putting the rules or where should we draw and where we don't draw, you can start opening up that freedom because they start to know the rules and they be able to access that station at their own time. So when Maenu was little, I started with just do-a-dot markers and maybe some crayons. Some people don't like crayons because they can draw on the walls. So if you see that your child is drawing on the walls, then maybe that is a clue. Maybe they like to draw the vertical surface. So maybe get an easel as your art and creative station. You can have stamps, you can have stickers, those easy stickers from the dollar section that are like little puffy, but they're not very strong on their stickiness, but they're very easy to handle. So get creative with the type of toys and materials that you provide and start testing to see how comfortable you feel with them. Obviously, we're not going to provide paint at this station because what we want to foster is independence. And paint is something that when they're in the early years, up to 10 years old, you still need to guide them a lot. So let's avoid the paint, but you can do a dot markers, you can do the magic markers, you can do window markers, you can do washable markers, you can do the no mess mat, which is a magic marker that only paints on the mat. So that would be something they can access on their own independently and get that drive that if they feel like creating stuff, they can go in there. As they get older, you can add cardboard boxes, toilet paper tubes, scissors, glue, and things like that to give them access to be creative and encourage that independence through the arts. Another area that I love is a building area. And I want you to look around on your play space and tell me if you have anything that promotes building. If you have an older child, this could be a box of Legos, and you want to use the Legos that are open-ended. The yellow box that comes with the pieces, and it is up to the child to decide what to build and how to build it. Versus those pre-made boxes that they teach you how to follow instructions step by step instead of promoting that creativity. If we want our kids to be creative, if we want our kids to encourage independent play, we need to create those environments where the toys are going to support that creativity. Giving them a toy that is going to tell them what to do and how to do it is not going to encourage them that creativity. So always opt for toys that the kid, the child, has to be in charge of the game versus the game telling them what to do. If you have a younger child, you can have blocks that they can easily stock up 1, 2, 3, that they don't have a specific way that they need to be stacked up. Avoid toys with lights, with flashes, with noises, because those toys tend to tell the child what the toy does and the only way to use it. So aim for open-ended toys like magnet tiles that your child will grow. So one of the things that for me, it was easy to understand what would be considered an open-ended toy is that if I go into his play area and I can create my own play as a parent, if I can build my own towers, if I can draw my own pictures, if I can create my own play scenarios, it's a play, it's considered an open-ended. If you get a piano could be, it makes noise, but it could be open-ended because it's up to me on how I press the keys, what the music will come out. Versus if I have a toy that I push the button and the lion pops up, and I push the other button and the frog comes up. And that's the only thing that toy does, that I know that's not an open-ended toy. That toy that I'm telling you to push the button, it's a baby toy. It's meant to create, it's meant to work on a specific skill. So if you have a baby, you want to get toys that obviously work on those skills. But as they get older and we want them to get more creative, we need to get those toys that are creative. Play animals, figurines, the zoo animals, the pond animals, the farm animals. Those are all considered open-ended toys because it is up to the kid to create the scenario. You can make lots of different scenarios with those animals. So aim to have that building station that promotes those. Blocks, Legos, magnet tiles, anything with magnets to build, it's a great creative station. You can get cardboard boxes and they can stack them up. That counts as blocks. So you can be super creative when it comes to those open-ended toys. Another area that maybe around 3 or 4 you will see them to really engage in is the pretend area play. So that's when you get the costumes and you want to get open-ended costumes. If you get a cape, that cape, I can be a superhero, I can be a nurse, I can be a butterfly. Versus if you get those costumes that it's the firefighter and that can only be the firefighter. So aim to have play skills, play silks that they can wrap around their heads and they wrap around their bodies and create their own outfit. That's going to encourage a little bit more independent play versus if you only have those community service costumes. Because once they're not interested in firefighters anymore, then that toy is no longer usable. But if you have a red play scarf or a play silk that is red, it can continue to evolve as your child's play evolves. And then the last piece is very important, and I think is one that it gets often overlooked, is floor space. You want to have a space that it's clear on the floor. You can have a mat, you can have rug, you can do it straight on the floor. Even though the floor is hard, I always tend to have a mat, usually because visually it creates an area where they can know that's where they can play versus the whole floor and then the toys go everywhere because there is no boundary. If you create a visual boundary with a mat, with one of those cushy floor that they interlap, they're so cool, you can have that area. So you need to have an area where they can put the toy down and they can spread around and work on the floor. As they're working on the floor, they are strengthening all of their muscles in their bodies, from their core to their shoulders to their back. And that also creates better kids that have better handwriting. It creates more muscles that's going to help them control their bodies better as they grow. So floor play is very important. So after this video, I want you to go take a pause, go around your house, declutter the toys that are no longer usable, that maybe they have outgrown, that have broken or missing pieces, and see if you have any of these areas that I talked about, the reading area, the creative area, a building, a pretend, and floor space area already in your playroom that you intuitively already created. And see the ones that you are missing so that you know that's one of the things that you can start adding on, or figure out where you're going to place those areas so that you know you have the environment that fosters that independent play. All right? So go on, you have homework, and I'll see you on the next video.